Hi guys, and welcome back. My name is Lorbai, or Maddie, and today I am reading Chapter 7 of #Murder Trending by Gretchen McNeil. Dee froze in her tracks. Nothing bad ever happens on Alcatraz without a camera close by. Was he fucking with her? There was a single square inch of the island that wasn't covered by one of those There wasn't a single square inch of the island that wasn't covered by one of those crow-shaped monstrosities. "Don't fall behind," Blair called out from down the street. "Safety in numbers." Dee seriously doubted that. Sorry. She hitched up her dress and jogged to rejoin Niles, who quickened his pace. She had more questions that needed answering. "I thought you said we have a 60-ish% of surviving outside." "You do," he said absently. "But because the cameras are further away, not because they don't exist." "Oh." Whatever hope of survival Dee had been able to muster in the last hour slowly drained away. Blair fell into step behind her. "Remember, fans don't spike outdoor kills as much. It's harder for the cameras to track you, and the zoom isn't as good. The postman's executioners want high-resolution close-ups for their kill videos." "The postmatics," Niles began, trying out his term for the postman's fans, "want to see as much of our fear as possible." Blair nodded appreciatively. "Postmatics. I dig. I'm so glad you approve. But wouldn't it be better to stay inside?" Depressed. That's funny. Depressed. I'm funny. She was desperate for all the survival details she could get. Find a spot without cameras and just hide. Instead of answering, Niles continued his conversation with Blair, speaking even louder than before. "And how about this one? Paniacs for the executioners." Executioners. Though Dee was supposed it was factually accurate, every time Niles or Blair used that term, it pissed her off. She preferred the ridiculous paniacs to the word that legitimized the postman's killers in any way. "I like it," Blair said. "I mean, not as much as postmatics, but it has a great ring to it." Dee sighed, exasperated. They were ignoring her questions as if sensing her mounting frustration. Blair slipped her arm through Dee's and gave her a friendly squeeze. "Check out the view." Dee had been so fixated on the cameras that she hadn't noticed they had reached the end of the street. A row of palm trees lined a rock wall shoreline, and waves lapped at the rocks, occasionally colliding in a spout of rainy spray that shot over the barricade. A wooden sign had been hammered into a crevice: "No swimming, dangerous water." Niles, Ethan, and Griselda wandered down the path that hugged the beach, but Dee stood at the edge of the rocky break, gazing out over the bay. A cargo ship powered through the channel, so close that she could count the rectangular containers stacked like Lego bricks on its deck. and beyond, the skyline of San Francisco itself glittering in the fading daylight as a thick blanket of fog spread around it from the west. The fog came quickly, tumbling across the city like an avalanche, racing downhill. Every second that passed seemed to show less and less of the shoreline as it was swallowed by the gray clouds. Wetness permitted the air. It clung to Dee's skin and clothes, chilling her to the bone. The weather changed so quickly, and it almost felt as if she slipped through a portal into another dimension, except San Francisco was still there, beyond the veil. Dee could see the glimmers of light, though the ever-shifting billows of fog. And was it her imagination, or could she hear the sound of distant car horns blaring from rush hour traffic, the chattering of laughter and conversation as people walked along the pier? It was as if the mist conducted the sounds of the city, carrying them across the water. Millions of people were powering through their daily lives while she was trapped in this hellhole. How many of them might be watching her on the Postman app at this very moment, tracking hashtag Cinderella Survivor's first night on Alcatraz 2.0? It seemed so close, the ship, the city, tantalizing, and there was no fence around the island. What prevented someone from trying to swim for it? A stupid no swimming sign. Dee wasn't much of an athlete, but maybe if she worked out at the gym a little, she could get strong enough to try. It's beautiful, isn't it? Blair's voice was low. I guess, Dee lied. Home sweet home. You're from San Francisco? Blair nodded absently. Born and raised. My whole life is right across the bay. Wife, house, cat. It's weird. When the president first announced that they were turning the old Treasure Island into a televised prison camp, I was like, yeah, right. I figured someone would put a stop to it. You know, Congress, Supreme Court, she sighed, but no one did. Though it was just a couple of years ago. Dee only vaguely remembered the early politics of Alcatraz 2.0. Her dad and stepmom had just gotten married, and though it had been 4 years since her abduction, Dee's dad was still protecting her from potential triggers. The news was never on in their house, so the only knowledge Dee had of the postman was what she picked up at school. My wife hated the app, Blair continued, her voice dreamy while she stared at the city across the bay. I checked it out at first, kind of like watching a train wreck. You couldn't look away, and the horror seemed fair. When you can consider what heinous things those people had done. Those people? I'm one of those people now. I guess. When I first got to Alcatraz 2.0, I used to imagine that I'd go back home one day. I'd dream that my conviction would be overturned, a new piece of evidence discovered, proving that I didn't kill the old lady next door. She glanced at Dee. I didn't. I know we all say that, but it's true. Blair paused. Was she waiting for Dee to acknowledge her innocence? It felt that way, the charged air between them. But what was Dee supposed to say? I was framed, Dee blurted out. She hadn't planned on sharing this info with anyone, but even though she was sure she trusted Blair, even though she wasn't sure she trusted Blair or Niles or any of these people. She felt the need to explain her own innocence. You too, huh? Some strength testified that I was a paranoid schizophrenic who believed an 85-year-old Mrs. Pansky next door had been stealing from us for years. That I was a paranoid schizophrenic who believed 85-year-old Miss Pansky next door had been stealing from us for years. As if. So Dee wasn't the only one? The jury bought that? Blair shrugged. They did what they were told to. Before Blair could finish talking, a siren tore through the air. Like Pavlov's dogs with a whistle, Niles, Ethan, and Griselda rushed back up the path to the edge of the rock wall and scanned the water. Dee tentatively followed, and it only took her a few seconds to find what they were looking for. In the mist of the choppy early evening waves of San Francisco Bay, she saw a solitary figure splashing through the surf. "Who is it?" Blair asked. Griselda shook her head. "Can't tell." "Shit," Ethan said, his eyes wide. "That's Jeremy." Blair sucked in a sharp breath and broke from Dee's side. "Oh no." Another glimmer of hope sparked to life inside Dee. "He's trying to escape," she said, realizing that her fantasy of swimming for freedom might not be so fantastical after all. Niles kept his hands around his mouth. "Jeremy, you'll never make it." Ethan joined him. "Come back, it's not too late." "Why would he come back?" Dee asked, confused. "It might work." Niles turned to her, his face ashen. "There's a reason no one tries to escape through the water. Something about his tone made the hair stand up on Dee's bare arms. The wake of the tanker rippled towards Alcatraz 2.0, and every few seconds a deep true trow? I don't know. Would momentarily obscure Jeremy from sight. Each time Dee was sure he had been pulled under, and each time Jeremy's head bobbed back up again as he swam for freedom. Despite the layer of fog, it seems like the worst possible time of day to attempt an escape. It was still light out. The water was at its peak choppiness, and though San Francisco was tantalizingly close, she knew that the trek would be a challenge even for the most experienced open water swimmer. Why not try in the middle of the night? The current is too dangerous at night, so he's using the tanker as cover, Niles said, his eyes darting back and forth between the departing ship and the guy in the water. "He's been waiting for a chance like this." "Fucking dumbass," Ethan said. "I warned him not to try and swim for it." Lights flared to life from a monumental concrete structure at the south end of the island. The building appeared to be hewn directly from the rock, like some kind of Bond villain's lair. Concrete crow's nests peppered the balustrade on the top floor, offering a panoramic view of the island. and its surrounding waters while the searchlights panned the waves, searching for the escapee. And Dee realized that this must be the guard station that Niles had mentioned earlier. Figures appeared on the balustrade, black-clad and swarming like ants out of their nest, and within moments dozens of guards lined the railings, weapons in hand, pointed down towards the water. Shots rang out around Jeremy. The water looked electrified as small spouts erupted, the bullets striking with lethal force, but either those were the worst trained snipers in the history of the U.S. law enforcement, or they were intentionally missing their target. Dozens of bullets peppered the water in a wide circle around the swimmer, none coming closer than 5 or 6 feet. Jeremy seemed undeterred. I have been reading that word wrong for a while. I finally got it. Undeterred. That makes the most sense, and I still read the word wrong. He continued to swim west, heading straight for the mainland, pumping his arms with all his strength as he fought the rough waves, and then the bullets stopped. "They're letting him go?" Dee asked. She's never seen this on the live feed from her prison cell. Maybe the postman didn't want the public to know that his inescapable island prison wasn't all it cracked up to be. Maybe there was a chance she'd be able to escape and find Monica's real killer. "Princess," Griselda said, squashing Dee's hope with an icy dread in her voice. "They'll never let us go." The whirl of a motor sounded from behind, growing louder with each second, and Dee turned in time to see 2 drones racing across the island. They flew straight for Jeremy, then slowed and hovered above him. Cameras. What had Niall just said? Nothing bad ever happened if there wasn't a camera close by, and now that the cameras had arrived, would Jeremy's doom soon follow? Jeremy either didn't hear the drones or chose to ignore them. He seemed to be standing still, his strokes making almost no headway against the current, and as Dee and her companions watched in tense silence, she could have sworn that something red was spilling out across the water. "That's blood," she said. She cried, pointing. "The guards hit him." Niles let out a long, slow breath. "It's blood, but it's not Jeremy's." "Huh? Then whose?" The rest of the sentence choked off in Dee's throat as she saw new movement in the water. The blue-gray dorsal fins, a dozen or more, made Dee's blood run cold. Jeremy was surrounded by sharks. He noticed them too. He stopped stroking, treaded water, desperately spinning around as he looked for means of escape. Then his body jerked, and his head and shoulders disappeared beneath the waves. He popped up for a split second later, arms thrashing as he gasped for breath. Then he went under again. The sharks were toying with him. This time when Jeremy resurfaced, he let out a blood-curdling scream, and even though Dee was pretty sure the sharks couldn't actually hear him, his cry seemed to spur them into action. There was a frenzy of splashing fins and churning of water around Jeremy as the sharks fought one another for a piece of his body. The foaming water was tinged with pink, and then Jeremy was gone. Okay, and now we get into the comments. Okay. PWNing this one. Oh, Tom Eccleston said PWNing this one. Hashtag Shark Tanked. Hashtag No Escape. Bradley for now commented, literally the stupidest thing ever. You realize that's been used like 4 billion times already, right? Hashtag originality is dead. Hashtag Biathosaurus. Hashtag sharks 74, inmates 0. Professor Extant replied, I know I say this every time, but I wonder if hashtag Molly Mahler gets pissed off that that the Alcatraz 2.0 security system basically impedes on her territory. Couldn't they think of something else? Hashtag No Escape. Hashtag Molly's Spite Campaign. The Griff comments, I've seen better special effects for my nephew's 4th grade science project. Where's the body? Jeremy clearly scubaed out to that tanker. None of this is real, people. Hashtag fake news. Hashtag eyes open. Hashtag don't trust the feed. Mrs. Ghost Huntress commented, this never gets old. Hashtag sharks 74, inmates 0. Steph Hoff comments, at Molly Mahler 4 Prez 46. I refuse to spike. Hashtag no escape attempts. Feels cheap. I mean, I'm glad he's dead. Can't avoid justice, Jeremy. But I still feel cheated. Tom Eccleston replied with PWNing this one. Hashtag nice try, Jeremy. Bradley for now commented, better grasshopper, but not great. And that's the end of chapter 7. Bye-bye.